Sorry, guys.
Start from the top, Andy. Go.
Again, this is the Southborough.
I'm requesting $2.5 million. Is what I meant to say. So just a point of
Sorry.
clarification.
Yeah, no. So sorry for the glitch there. This is again the Southborough CPC. It's Thursday, February 2nd, 2023. We are discussing, we have a quorum. It's now 7:28. The meeting was called to order. We are discussing the Algonquin Athletic Facility. The request from the athletic facility project team is a total of $255,811.70, which is the portion of the Southborough piece, including a 20% contingency fee. The full use of the useful life of the courts is expected to be 20 years, and after 15 years, need maintenance. And if the CPC does fund it, there would be an IMA that the town would have to most likely go in partnership with Northborough to adjust the overall project funding for the entire complex. That's a summary of where we're at, and sorry for the glitch for the recording earlier, but I think I covered everything. Does everyone agree?
Great.
All right. Let's see. So Kathy, you're all set. I'm going to move you back. Any other questions from the CPC members?
No, for the recording purposes, I'll just recap some of the questions I asked, which was, we all covered that it would be open to the public outside of school hours or school sports usage. The tennis courts do not currently include lights, but it's something on the list that if budget were to allow for, it's certainly on that list, although the football field will, or the two, I don't know how we should refer to them, the two athletic fields will have lights that are more sufficient than the ones that are there today. And I think my other question I asked was, at this point in time, there's no plan to introduce scheduling of courts, the basketball or the tennis. It's just first come, first serve.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right. So if there are no other questions,
Freddie looks like our hands up.
oh yeah, Freddie?
Yeah, can I jump in for a couple of suggestions for the committee to consider?
I can barely hear you.
Is this better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So can I make a few suggestions for the committee to consider that would be worthwhile for the project proponents to hear as well? That if you're changing the project scope from what the original application was, you should get an updated application. And then for the request for additional funds beyond the tennis and pickleball court, that should come from the project proponent. If the selectmen want the CPC to do that, I would suggest it should come from the project proponent, what they want, laying out exactly what the funds would be for, so the CPC can be assured that it's CPA funding appropriate. So you'll want to go through that process if there's going to be more funding requested.
Okay, I was going to mention that to begin with. That yes, Paul, I think, to update the original application had like everything in terms of what the entire complex was looking for. So again, to keep it streamlined to, if we're going to just talk about the basketball court, the pickleball courts, and the tennis, I think that makes it much cleaner, and we can just edit the application like Freddie said. Do you think that there'd be another request for funding for other things, or this is it from the CPC? Or Keith, or,
Good, Paul.
Well, as far as I know, this is it, although what to hear you had about 700,000 to play with. I don't know if there's other competing requests or not, but you know. And then to hear Kathy Cook say that the town selectmen and advisory would like to use as much of the CPC funds as we can, and I don't know, I'm kind of wondering to myself here if we shouldn't be asking for more.
well, I mean, we haven't voted, but I mean, the only thing is that we wouldn't, we've never depleted the funds all the way down to zero.
Okay,
There's always a little fluctuation that happens due to what we're invested in and things like that, the town invests things in. So, but that's just me speaking historically what's happened.
Could I speak as, I guess I'll speak now as a Recreation Commission member, that there are some items within town that, we're not bringing this year, but likely do plan to bring. So I would just, we'd have to take that into consideration, I think.
Yeah. So I think for now, at least, Paul, so you know that we would need to, adjust the current application just down to the tennis court, the pickleball and the basketball now. And it does make it, personally, I think it's a lot cleaner. Like I said at the beginning, it's focused on things that people can't think that we're mixing it with things that we can't fund. And it makes it a lot easier.
Okay.
Even though it complicates things for the select board with the IMA that they have to do. But it sounds like they want to do that. So, okay, there's that piece. The next, before we get into motions or anything, looking from the CPC, do we want to discuss the MOU now? It sounds like it's still, we can highlight some, key things that we want to have in there that I think we've talked about before, such as if Northborough decides they're not going to fund any of the project, that obviously these funds wouldn't go to a tennis court at the high school and redo all that. It's contingent on Northborough paying their fair share of the same said project. Something like that. And that the IMA would be in place, that Southborough wouldn't have to pay the same amount of the total bond because we're paying upfront a portion, of the entire project. That it's targeted just for the 9 tennis courts that would be rehabbed, for 7 tennis courts, 3 pickleball and 1 basketball court, as identified. And it's, since they're ripping it completely up, I think there's no question that it's a complete refurbishment or renovation of the tennis courts. It's not like they're just putting new lines on it or filling cracks. So it is a restoration of the tennis courts. Anyone think of anything else that they'd want to see in the MOU? Ben, I see you. So I think you're on mute.
I am. I was saying no. I can't think of anything.
Could I jump in, Andrew?
Yeah, Freddie.
Ready? Always the contingency is mentioned in the warrant article and the MOU, and this is a little bit different. I don't know what the answers to these questions are, but if you go over budget, are you going to know that it's specific to the tennis court portion? And then are you aware, is the project proponent aware that before you can spend any of that money, you have to come in to the CPC to discuss why, to get the release of those funds, and that it would be expected to be at the same a percentage, whatever the overages, or you need contingency for, specifically for the tennis court, pickleball and basketball court, that it would be a percentage based on the same percentage as is it the MIA?
Well, it's just the agreement between the two towns.
Yeah, it wasn't MIA, but sorry. That, we wouldn't be paying more than the percentage we're paying for the overall construction work. So that would be laid out in the MOU as well. And how contingency funds are used, and to be sure that the whole project goes over budget, are they able to see that it's specific to the tennis courts and how much that is or not? This is a big project. I don't know we haven't run into working on something like this before.
We will have a project manager that would be assigned to this project and would be able to, in dealings with other projects that we've done in recent years, where it is really itemized based on the various components of the project. So I do think that we would be able to tell if it was specific to the tennis courts or if it was another piece of the project
Okay.
that was the causing the overage.
So you see no concerns on having that written in the memorandum of understanding?
I do not. It's something that, we would obviously want to consult with our bond counsel on.
I mean, you could make a specific reference to the attachment that you sent out that breaks down the cost of the tennis court. The memo could just reference, if there's contingency funds are being requested, it has to be, related to what's set forth in the cost estimate by Gail that's attached. That it doesn't seem to me that that's a problem, but it was a good comment to make, Freddie. But
There's another thing I just thought of, which I don't know how it works in a project like this, because historically the CPC made a recommendation for the townhouse, and we put some funding in and some bonding money in, right? But it was one project, so that's different than how this works. If the CPC is recommending money and that's going to go to pay down the bond up front, that you bond less, they typically would not be putting money in ahead of time for the contingency. That only comes out of the CPC's funds when the contingency monies are needed. And if that needs to work differently for this project, the CPC would need to be aware of how that functions. Because what I understand is you're going to bond the whole project and not.
Yes, that's correct.
So how would it work for the CPA funding? That would be, say, 255,000. Would we turn that over when you go out to bond? Would it reduce the bond amount? Where does that money reside until you start paying off the bond? And how would it work that the CPA contingency monies is never passed over until they're needed?
Becky, can you take that one?
Yep. So the way that I envision this working, Freddie, is that we are actually intending to go out for bond anticipation notes. And we will, so as part of that process, we would then utilize the CPC funds, assuming that and I know Kathy and Jason and I have had some conversations about this, where the town would write basically a check to the regional school district to offset the bonding. And it would then reduce the amount that the town would then be obligated to pay back as part of the debt assessment on the project.
So if we, to Freddie's point, if we're gonna put, X amount down up front for whatever we think the project's gonna be. Mark, you said the contingency was 20%? Was tied into it?
That's correct.
So am I correct in assuming I just took the 255 times it by 20.2, I got $51,162.34. Was the contingency, is that right?
No, we had it as, Becky, make sure I got this right, is that the base was 213,000, just over that, adding on a $42,000 contingency, which would be 20%, and that brought us to the 255,000.
The point I was trying to make is the CPC would be reducing the bond amount
Right.
without including the contingency money that would stay in an account of the CPCs for when the contingency money was needed. It would not be paying down the bond up front because it's contingency.
So fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Becky, would you agree?
Yep. I agree.
So, so Keith, so we got 213, what?
Yeah, no, I'll give you the full,
Because we're gonna vote.
yeah, I understand. So the base amount, Becky, make sure I got this right, is $213,176.41. The 20% contingency value is $42,635.28, which then added together gives you the grand total of $255,811.70.
I've got to, I mean, it doesn't add up at the end, but
No, it doesn't.
The contingency is $42,635.58.
Oh, is there? Okay.
58.
Becky, our spreadsheet's wrong.
It's probably Google versus Excel.
Okay.
It's still, though, it ends in a 9, not a 0.
It's probably just a rounding up. So we can do 59. We'll round up the contingency by a penny.
I mean, it's just, so it was 99. So I got 90. All right, it's just pennies, but okay. All right. So if the CPC members are ready, I guess we'd be looking for a recommendation or a motion that we'd recommend the town meeting the use of $176.41 for the rehabilitation of the Algonquin High School tennis courts to be included with 7 tennis courts, 3 pickleball courts, and 1 basketball court, with a contingency that would be set aside separately that where they requested, if needed, of $42,635.58. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second,
Well done. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, I'm going to call you out as I see you on my screen. Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and Kristen,
yes.
and Andrew is a yes. So that is unanimous. So, Paul, Keith, Rebecca, congrats.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
We
very
really
much.
appreciate the
Appreciate it.
support.
So we'll move forward with that. The other pieces, we'll work with you as we iron out the MOU. I think you got a gist of there's gonna be some technical things in there just to make sure that, the money comes back if something were to happen, but
Understood.
the expectation, as you just heard from the vote, is that unanimously, a total of $255,811 $255,811.99. Potentially funding with the contingency for the tennis courts. So.
That's exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
presentation.
No, our pleasure.
So for the rest of the committee, I think if you let me work with Freddie to draft it up, at our next meeting, we'll have both the MOU and the warrant article drafted. Freddie, is that enough time? When do we have to have that warrant article in?
Well, it's on your agenda later that you're going to have another meeting, but that meeting needs to be pushed back. Can I mention that?
Yeah.
The CPC tentatively had a meeting scheduled if you needed one in February for I believe it was the 15th. But I've heard from John Parent that the bids for the townhouse won't be coming in until the 16th, and he's going to need a few days to figure out what it is. And he asked if we could have our meeting on the 21st or the 22nd, I think that was the date, Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week from the 16th. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think the selectmen are signing the warrant on the 28th. I'm not sure.
We got a couple of selectmen, I think, still out there, so
Can you ask them?
yeah, I'm gonna move Kathy over.
Because you still don't know about the warrant, if you're going to need to add more money for the townhouse or what the bid's coming in at, because they won't know till.
Hey
We'll
Kathy,
start to know
welcome
on
back.
the 16th, so.
So we pushed it back a week, Freddie. We're going to sign it on the 8th. Well, we're going to be done the night of the 7th. We're going to meet, and then we're going to send it to the printer on the 8th, signed and sealed.
Okay, so we'll have enough time. Perfect.
So that would mean having a meeting on either the 21st. Oh, no, I think he asked for the Wednesday or Thursday, 22nd or 23rd, if the committee can look at their calendars, and then we can invite the representatives from the Algonquin project back to tie up any, finalize the MOU and anything else. And Andrew and I would be in touch with them beforehand so that there's no surprises at that meeting. Everything goes smoothly. And we would expect another updated application before then for the files.
Yep.
Yep, Freddie, I will be putting that updated application together.
Thank
So
you.
the 21st or 22nd, is that right? A Tuesday or a Wednesday?
I think he said Wednesday or Thursday.
22nd or 23rd? Okay. Ben, are you available on 23rd?
Half a sec. I am not available on the 23rd. Sorry, I'm away that week.
Oh, the whole week?
Also, I think it's hard for,
School vacation.
is it hard for Ann on Wednesday?
Well, that's school vacation that week, the 20th. That's what Ben just said.
I should be fine on either the 22nd or the 23rd.
And does that mean you're not available at all that week?
I'm going to be in California.
Yeah, he's not available. All right, so what if we, Kathy said it was gonna be March 7th, you're signing it? Is that right?
Yes,
So if we moved it to the 28th, which is a Tuesday, February, the last day of February,
I can do that.
how about the rest of the CPC?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, works for me.
Kristen?
Sorry, I'm mute, yes.
Okay. And that works for you?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's shoot for the 28th then. I don't want to screw up people's vacation. Perfect. All right. Review draft. So that'd be the finalization review. We didn't need to talk about any other warrant articles, right, Freddie?
Not tonight, no.
Okay. I'm gonna leave
It's on the
Kathy in
agenda.
here because I think for the review timeline for town meeting, we just talked about that. So I think we're good there. So the next item is the discussion item for warrant article to increase CPC surcharge. And I see Andrew Faneth out there too. Should I bring him over?
if you would, I'd appreciate it.
And I see John.
Andrew, can I
Hey,
just point out that the contingency amount should be 49 cents, not 58 cents for the math to work. In the interest of accuracy. Sorry about that.
Can I suggest we get something finalized in the application in writing so you can vote exactly next meeting? You don't have to redo it again tonight.
Okay.
They understand, everyone understands that you're voting for the big amount, and we'll get the exact dollar amount and cents next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, Freddie.
I see Jason's out there too. Does Jason want to be part of this? Or was he here for the Algonquin? Jason, if you want to be moved over, raise your hand. All right. So this next item, Kathy asked me to put this on because we were talking about a couple of things, one of which was the Algonquin facility, but she was asking about the possibility of increasing the surcharge to 3% and had ideas on that and asked me to put on for discussion. So Kathy, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so is Andrew here too? Let me just make sure.
I did not see Andrew.
Yeah, I'm here, Kathy.
Yeah, I moved him over. Sorry.
There he is. Okay, so I'll start. Andrew can keep me honest here, and Andrew Pfaff can keep me honest here and chime in. So to be clear, I'm not here representing the select board. I am on the select board, and the select board has discussed this. Select board is interested in this topic, but we've taken no vote. It's just, something to be discussed. However, when I was on advisory, Andrew Pfaff and I, we did talk about this quite a bit. I did mention it to Andrew Mills at one point, who seemed to be surprised that we even were positive about this. So we've been talking about this for a while. I don't know, Andrew Pfaff, maybe 2 years, at least a year and a half. So we put together some numbers to show what the difference would be between a 1% surtax, which is what we have today, and a 3% surtax, which is the most that Massachusetts allows. If you take a look at where other towns and cities are, there's quite a few that still haven't adopted CPA at all. Almost half, not quite half. And then there's quite a few that are 1, and there's 1.5, there's 2, and there's quite a few that are 3. If you adopt the 3%, not only do you get 3 times the state match that you get from a 1% town, you get a bonus, which is what was appealing about this. We also knew that there were some projects coming down the road, Algonquin and possibly others, that probably qualified for CPA funding. And therefore, we felt that this was a timely thing to at least discuss and decide as groups whether we think it's something that we should bring forth to the voters. The ballot has to determine this. So in the end, there's two ways to get to the ballot, but in the end, the residents vote on this. So I've got a spreadsheet that I'm looking at. Andrew Pfaff has seen this. And if you take a look, so, you know, the state match has been going up. You know, it was high at one point, came down, and now it started going back up. The state is, and this is a direct quote from Jim McGovern, who we met with a couple of weeks ago. It's flush with cash. So there's no guarantee the state match is going to stay as high as it is now. But the state is doing really well fiscally. So the hope is that it is. Even if we stay at 1%, we still get more money from the state. Select board and advisor are always looking for ways to increase non-tax levy money so we can keep the tax levy under control. And this would be a way to accomplish that. We would end up with more money coming in from the state if we raise the surtax from 1% to 3%. So the numbers that I put together, so Andrew Mills, you've seen this before, but I've updated it to the most recent numbers as far as the CPA match that we received for fiscal year 23. So that number was $150,000. So we received $150 from the state, $391 from our local surtax, for a total of $542. I'm rounding slightly, $542,000. If we were to put this forward for a vote at this year's election in May and have it effective 7/1/23, then that 541 would grow to approximately $1.7 million, based on the match for fiscal year 23, which was 38%. So again, we don't know for sure. This is an estimate, it's a projection based on last year, but it's still, you know, the point is it's a lot more money than what we're receiving right now, and would give us a lot more room to do a lot more projects. So I'll leave it at that and ask Andrew Pfaff to basically correct me, add anything to that he wants to.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I think the only other thing I would add is you know, the first time around when we go to the 3%, it lost 51-49. So it was pretty close. Had it passed back then, the town would have gotten an additional around 4.9 million in match, right? Additional money from the state, not from the tax levy or the surcharge. So, you know, we certainly left some money on the table by, you know, that extra 1% vote. And I think to Kathy's point, there's a lot of projects coming down the pipe. When we look at Algonquin, you know, advisory would really like to, you know, do our whole 3% as CPA funded. Obviously, our bonding capacity is next to nothing, but you know, increasing the surcharge to 3% would then give us significant additional bonding capacity. So I think, you know, with that project coming in, and there's some other recreation projects in the future. There's some, you know, more conversations about maybe a recreation center. So there's certainly a lot of projects down the pipe. Certainly the Affordable Housing Trust and SHOPC have a plan to do some more projects. So I think it's a good opportunity for the town to look at diversifying, you know, and getting some additional revenue from the state, which is, you know, kind of what we're here for.
So Freddie, I think, was involved in the first time this was passed, and as Andrew said, so you can get to the ballot one of two ways. You can go to town meeting and ask for it to go on the ballot, get a approval there, or you can just do a petition and get 10% of the voters to sign that to get to the ballot. So that's what ended up happening. So the 3% failed at town meeting. So then a group got together, got enough signatures, and put it on the ballot at 1%, and it passed. So that's kind of the history of how we got to where we are today. So there's two ways to do it. We either go to town meeting to get the approval, or we don't do that and just collect signatures and enough volume that we can go right to the ballot. But again, the ballot is in the end the town's got to vote either way, regardless.
Kathy, it's 5% of registered voters.
Okay, so I think we've got 3,000 registered voters, 4,000. So anyway, well, maybe it's more than that because I still think it's 300 signatures you need. So maybe we got 6,000 registered voters. So that's how it gets there. It's got to be the ballot, and there's two ways to get to the ballot.
I was actually the president of the Southborough Ballot Question Committee for the second one.
Yep.
And so you have to form a ballot question committee, go through all those hoops with the state before you can start the petition.
Thank you. So, Kathy, I think, from a CPC, and I'm just talking from my own stance, right? That in the past, we've gotten beaten up a lot from certain groups within the town or individuals in the town, calling us just an additional tax and yada, 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 trying to do away with the CPC.
Yep.
That I know you're aware of, but so I think from a CPC stance, not my own opinion, that it's not coming from us is a good thing. That it's not us saying, hey, we want to expand our, kitty to do more things. This is coming from the outside and it's being requested. I think politically that's a good thing, personally. Put
All
that
right.
on the
We
table.
take the heat.
Well, no, not at the heat, but it's more that it's which comes first, the chicken or the egg in this case. Like, we can. I think you see that there, the projects are coming. I'm sure Jason knows too that projects are coming from a capital planning and pieces like that, where it's the town, other town entities saying, hey, we could really leverage this and it'd be a lot better, instead of the CPC coming forth and saying, hey, we want to increase, the tax levy or the surcharge and everything. So I think that's a great step. In terms for me personally too, and I know we talked a little bit about this, I think vetting this a little bit at town meeting floor would probably be best to get it out there so people don't think we're trying to slip one under the table. But that's, that's my thought. I don't know how others think, but and then if it doesn't pass at either this town meeting or a special town meeting, then go to the ballot that way. But
It's got to go the ballot either way. So the question is.
well, I mean
ballot.
the signature route
Yeah,
is what I
so
meant.
you think the better way to get to the ballot is town meeting, which is certainly a reasonable thing to think. So to me, the way to present this, and I think this is accurate, is that in the end, we're actually trying to save taxes, because if there are a lot of projects coming down the pike that qualify for CPA funding, then if we have more funds from the state to help pay for those, then in the end, we actually could save taxes. Now, it's a hard thing to present clearly. You'd have to, think really hard how to make sure people understand that. So rather than come out of the tax levy bucket, it comes out of the CPA bucket. But in the end, with the state money coming in to help, you actually, more state money coming in, you actually save that much from the tax levy. So that's the whole background to wanting to do this, is we think we actually may save tax levy or reduce the tax levy by being able to receive more money from the state.
And to elaborate on, so advisory took this up in the summer, one of our summer discussions when we started discussing the Algonquin project and kind of knew what the cost was there. And advisory was in support of it. And I think that's where, Kathy, I think also, I don't know if everybody knows, there is currently a placeholder in the annual town meeting warrant to increase the CPA surcharge. It's being proposed by the select board. But I think the idea is that, it could be proposed by the select board. We want to ensure that both advisory and CPC would support that. Otherwise, at town meeting, it's going to fight a hard battle. But I think the ask is really to see whether or not CPC would support both advisory, hopefully select board, which hasn't voted yet, and kind of trying to move that forward.
Can I ask Kathy, is it possible to modify some of the exemptions?
I don't know why not, Mark. I haven't looked at that. So if you're talking about, the low income exemption, et cetera, there are several exemptions that are involved in the CPA. You know, the first one is the first $100,000 of your house value gets whacked off everybody's. So I don't know if that, so I don't know the CPA well enough to know what all you could do, but I don't know why, if there are exemptions, which there are, we couldn't look at those two to try to possibly mitigate the impact on the portion of the population we wanted to make sure there wasn't much of an impact to. So I don't see why you would consider this. And I'm fairly confident, again, I cannot speak for the select board. I'm just telling you what I think, but I don't think select board would want to go forward with this without, you know, the full-throated support of both advisory and CPC. So that, I mean, if we were to put this on the warrant and then both of you stand up and say we don't like it, I mean, it's not going to pass. So we wouldn't, there'd be no reason to do that. I don't know that select board is keen on doing this at this town meeting because we've got so much other stuff on there that is going to be very time consuming and in some cases controversial. So it really may be better for a special in the fall where we don't have too much on it and we really got time to present this to the public so they really understand this. I mean, we're running out of time. This meeting is, you know, not far away. So if the consensus is the better way to put it on the ballot is to go through town meeting, I don't know that there is a lot of support select board to put it on this one. I think it would come at a later one. So I will say that, but again, I can't speak for sure. That's just what I think based on what we have said so far.
I'm honestly not sure where I stand on it, but I'd be more inclined to support it if the exemptions were perhaps changed somewhat to help the more vulnerable people in the community. I got to give it some thought.
And Mark, and Freddie, please correct me if I'm wrong, or Andrew, I believe all of the exemptions that are available, Southborough has, right? It has low income, it has low to moderate senior properties, and it has class 3 residential, class 4 industrial.
When we wrote it last time, my memory is we tried to cover all of that to the best of our ability, but I wouldn't say for sure without actually reading it and making sure there were no changes made to the legislation since we passed it, which was, believe it or not, I believe 30 years ago. I mean, sorry, 20 years ago, 2003.
Yeah, I had just seen those exemptions on the coalition's website. The low income, first 100,000 residential. But
I believe we took what, because we were trying to make it seem fair and reasonable at the time we passed it.
Yep.
I mean, we promoted it before.
So Andrew, is the 100,000 the cap on that piece of it? You can't go higher as far as exemption?
I think so. I was looking at the coalition's website. I just pulled it up on terms of what exemptions were available. And it's the first 100,000, unless it's a low income housing or lower moderate income senior housing. And they have to apply for it every year. And then there's the 100,000 is just the first, first ones there. So it looks like there's only 4 exemptions. And I think we have all 4.
But of course, that exemption helps the lower price houses a lot more than it does the higher price houses, which is what it's intended to do. 100,000 on a, $500,000 house is 20% of it. And on a, $1 million house, it's 10% of it. On a $250,000 house, it's 40% of it. So that exemption does help lower price houses a lot.
Anybody know what other towns' experiences might be doing this? Because that would likely come up in any discussion that takes place.
As far as going from 1 to 3,
Yeah.
I don't know. Good question. And there's a lot of information, as Freddie knows, that you can get off the state website on this. So my guess is somebody may know the answer to that. That we can see, you can see when people tried. So you can see when they've tried and you can see when they failed. So I think that's probably pretty easy info to find out.
Yeah, but Kathy, as easy as that is to get, it's Kristen, as easy as that is to get to your earlier point, it's February 2nd. We don't have enough time to fact gather, educate, especially to your point, it's a complicated, I think we all get it, right? Like it seems like more, but in the end, it saves money because we're getting matched, but that's not an easy message to get across. And I say here and I'm like, and I'm listening to all of this and I'm learning a lot. There's no way we can have this ready for town meeting in my mind. I think you're right, a special town meeting.
I agree with you. I mean, select board's got so much on their plate now to get ready for town meeting already, and we don't even have this on a agenda to talk about.
Yeah.
So the other thing too is if you went the collecting the signatures route, you've got to get that on the ballot 45 days ahead of town meeting or town
Yes.
election. That's like middle of March, so that's not much more time either.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a little joke here. Citizens petitions are not really welcomed too much, so I don't think that's even the route to go. Like, we just don't have the time to educate. That's the big thing.
What's, Kristen, it's not a citizen's petition. It's literally going to the transfer station, collecting signatures. But you still got to get that done 45 days. It's winter. Who wants to stand up at the transfer station right now, right? It's not summer. So I agree with you. I don't think there's time to get it done right now, but I do think there's probably time to get it done for a fall special, which we seem to be heading toward.
100%.
You know,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Waiting till at least the fall to get some education, some outreach to I don't think much of the community knows it's even being contemplated right now. And I'm a little worried with the, the current economic climate. I think part of the outreach should be, the intended uses of this. And you mentioned some projects in the future. I will say the committee, we reach out every year to every department in town to try to do some planning ourselves, and we ask what's coming down the road. I think, speaking for a few of us, we're caught a little bit off guard with the townhouse project, which thankfully we were able to fund. But you mentioned there are some projects coming in the future. I'm curious what those projects are, and I suspect that could help with a more convincing narrative with this.
well, there's two big ones that might have a CPA component. It's certainly not the whole thing. So the first one is one that has been talked about quite a bit, which is what to do about NERI, which could be a really big project or a really not quite as big project. So there's that one that might have some CPA something in there that could be used, probably not a lot, but something. And then there is a committee that's been formed, an ad hoc committee to investigate building a separate community center focused on recreation. So that's the two, Ben, that Andrew was referring to.
I'd add Choate in there, Kathy, too.
Okay, yeah, the tow field. So there's three. So those are the three ones that he's referring to. Then, we need.
And one other one, sorry to interrupt, Kathy, is South Union. Again, if that ends up becoming affordable housing, that was the other one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the South Union affordable housing, clearly I see potential for a lot of CPA eligibility. The other two projects, just not to get too far into the weeds with them with this, but yeah, the things that we're able to fund are fairly limited once you start, clawing into the details. I would want to make sure that if we're using these things, to explain the desire to increase the surcharge, that there are things that are actually fundable.
Yeah. And here's a fourth, and this will raise your eyebrows. What if in the end, we've got another application to do a 40B project at Park Central? What if the town in the end decided that the best route to go there was to buy that property and turn it into a park?
Ooh.
And I'm just throwing that out there. That's not on the table right now, but that's what some towns have done to deal with a unwanted 40B project.
Or if there's recreational opportunities.
Yeah.
I'll throw one more into the list, and it's kind of small potatoes compared to everything else we talked about, but we do plan on bringing something forward for the dog park up at the former landfill in front of NERI.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
And restaurate the dog park phase 1, phase 2. There's a couple of phases to it, and then the restoration of a practice field up there. And then somebody already mentioned Choate, but we're assuming we're going to have to do a lot of fundraising for that one, but where we fall short.
So whoever said this might, I think it was Mark said that this may not be the better time to do it. You're right. We're looking at another terrible year as far as the effect of the budget on homes. The budget itself, we've got a really good proposed budget for fiscal year 24, but the problem is COVID has basically increased the prices of houses and lowered the prices of businesses. So the way the taxes get allocated among the two groups also affects what you pay. And we're going to have this for a second year in a row. So we're looking at, we think right now, based on the meeting we had on Saturday, the joint advisory select board meeting, we think we're going to end up with a between a 5 and 6% year-over-year increase to residential tax bills. And that's a lot. And it was that last year. And we're really hoping that this is the last year for this, that prices have stabilized and businesses have stabilized. But the business community here is still suffering. We still got a lot of vacancies. There's a lot to do to try to shore up the businesses here. So this may not be the right time to, Mr. Murphy's statement a minute ago, to even do it in the fall. I don't know. So we need to talk about that too. People may just say enough, but again, we're trying to reduce the overall taxes. That's one of the reasons we're doing this, bringing more state money. So we're not trying to increase taxes net. We're trying to actually reduce the tax levy, bring in more money, and still get some good things done as far as CPA projects.
And just from an advisory perspective, we haven't taken a formal vote on it, but the straw poll, idea was, and why we took this up in the summer, is we wanted to use the 3% for Algonquin. So I know we're talking about fall town meeting. Ideally, this would be on the spring ballot. And we'd go to use the current warrant article and try to get it passed there, or get signatures. We only need, I think, 370 signatures, which isn't impossible to get. But so, which may mean that we push off Algonquin for a year. But I think to increase the surcharge, you really need a project of which you need the funding for. So it's a bit of a chicken of an egg. And we have a project here that seems to garner good support from the community. That would be a candidate for CPA, that we don't have enough funds, that if the surcharge was 3%, we would be able to fund. I personally think we should try to go guns blazing, try to keep it on the current annual town meeting, educate people where we can, and put it on the ballot and try to get it approved in May.
Andrew, is there really that much fundable work in the Algonquin project under CPA? That's my big question, because it strikes me that a lot of it, like stadiums, for instance, stadium seating, that kind of thing, simply it's not fundable. And the fact that something sort of has a recreation use, that the CPA is a pretty tight definition of what counts as recreation. So I just have a little concern there.
I believe Becky has gone through it with Freddie and the coalition or something like that, but it looks like about 6 million of the 7 million in total would be. And it looked like Northborough wasn't going to use much, if any, of their CPA funds. So what we had talked about, and I think it is possible, is Southborough has to put in 3 million of the 7, or rough numbers. We could pay 3 million of the eligible items. So we could pay the whole tennis court, the whole, we have to pay the full amount of the dollars, but we could put the line items to things that were CPA eligible. We believe we could do that.
So I'll just jump in. I'm not
One point of
familiar.
clarification. Go ahead, Freddie.
Sorry, I'm not familiar that we came up with any $6 million that was eligible, and it's really up to the CPC to look at it really closely. I don't think they went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Anything within the stadium can be determined not to be, whether it's an allowable use, but stadiums, and you hear that the topic is stadium lighting, that whole area could be perceived as not being fundable.
So Freddie,
it's a
what
conversation for the CPC to have, not to say that I didn't go through anything with Becky and the coalition and come up with anything like $6 million.
So Freddie, Becky and Greg at our Saturday summit did say what Andrew said, that they thought it all qualifies. And I don't know what they did to make the determination other than the turf field.
So I don't
But
think
even there,
I don't think
even
that's the
there, though,
conversation for
Kathy,
here.
there's some,
All right, Kristen, I think you're breaking up a bit.
sorry about that. I know I stopped because I was interrupting Freddie. Freddie, do you want to finish what you were saying?
I would just say that it hasn't been vetted through the CPC and there's lots of considerations, and in these sorts of cases, it's not black and white. What another town has said is fundable doesn't necessarily relate to what a different town's interpretation. And I don't agree from my interpretation, but I'm just one person, that the rules say everything but the turf fields is allowable. Anything within a stadium not allowable in the reading. So that means,
And Freddie, just adding to your point, having done a lot of research on what it takes to build a turf field and what funds can be used where, we actually, we met with the team in Shrewsbury who was responsible for putting turf there. That's not exactly true. There are aspects of the project that are questionable and could be. And I just say that to say, to your point, there's a lot more research I think we need to do. And Andrew, I think you just, slipped because last year town meeting was in May, but our town meeting's in March. It's March 25th. We have February vacation coming up. I mean, just realistically, I don't know about you guys, but I suspect that's a lot of work to take on for a very short amount of time.
The May was the ballot.
Yeah, but if we're going to get to the ballot through town meeting, as Kristen said, and Kristen knows why we're meeting in March, then time really is passing fast. And there's a lot to be done with other things that are clearly going to be on the warrant beforehand. So I'm skeptical we could pull this off successfully. But I've got an open mind. I know how much Andrew Pfaff believes I'd love to see this done. I will tell you, I think would be a good thing to do. And I wish we could find a way to pay for more of Algonquin, but I don't know that there's a lot of support for delaying Algonquin for a year. I think that with the pictures that we've seen, with how long they've already waited, that there really is a pretty big group of people that like to see that passed at this town meeting so they can do the work over the summer and be ready to go late fall. I mean, we've been told that track teams from other schools won't run on our track because it's so bad. So I don't know that there's a lot of support for delaying Algonquin another year. There might be. I mean, I'm just telling you what I think.
Yeah, and Kathy, you and I have obviously talked about this, but I figure I'll let the rest of the committee know. But personally, I would rather push it off for a year, get the CPA surcharge increase, pay for the whole thing with match. So we're using more of the state money than the town taxpayer money. On top of that, construction costs are starting to go down. And I have concerns about putting a project out to bid in, basically in April, when, Northborough would be the last town meeting to approve this project to start in July. I think that construction bid timeline is too close, and pushing it off a year probably makes better fiscal sense. It might not make sense from an athletics perspective, but I think fiscally, from an advisory perspective, in my perspective, pushing it off a year, getting a better match with the state, using as much CPA as possible. But again, it's up to the town to decide.
And there's a safety perspective. I mean, we kind of went through this when we redid our track, right? Like, it was just at the point that it wasn't safe, and we got to take that into consideration too.
Yep.
Kristen, I think this one looks much worse than Trottier.
Sorry, just pulling back from specific projects and everything, and the original discussion item was specifically, to talk about the possibility of raising it.
Yep.
It sounds like there is, some interest, David, I haven't heard from you and Ann, but in the possibility of, raising it. I know, given the proper projects that could be coming down the pike, my perspective, not taking a formal vote here or anything, that it makes sense, and fiscally for the town and everything, and it could really benefit. I agree that the communication piece, and that's where I said originally that probably airing it out at a town meeting would be best. to discuss it and educate people, because, you know, as much as we've tried for many projects throughout the town to get a lot of people on board and education out there, it seems to fall short until town meeting comes. But, you know, that's me. So I'm just curious from other members of the board, is there interest in supporting, you know, granted, if there's enough project need to support an article to go to 3%. And this is not official or anything, just trying to get a straw vote.
No, I'd like to say that I tentatively support it. I am concerned that if we rush it and fail, there's always the danger. I think we've seen this with failed warrant articles in the past. You kind of poison the well, and it makes it more difficult to then come back and get it approved at a subsequent town meeting. I think it's really important to try the best we can to get it right the first time. But I do tentatively support it.
I agree with Ben. I mean, those of you who know, you know, having gone to town meeting with things that maybe weren't fully prepared. And I think we need to learn from those lessons. I mean, if we can't answer every question drilled at us, then to Ben's point, like now we're putting ourselves 5 steps behind the following year. If you get this negative sentiment behind it. So I think ducks just have to be perfectly in a row, especially in this sensitive environment with tax rates. So we have an idea of projects that we want to do in the future, but I don't think any of them are as firmly planted as they should be. I don't think they're prioritized between departments. I think, you know, we need to bring well, and I know our committee does this, but you know, what is like the capital plan to stand behind the 3%? And then what are the savings that we get, you know, in the long run by upping it? Like, and I just, again, I feel like that's a tremendous amount of work to do before the meeting. And I disagree a little bit. I do think there's a lot of education you can do behind the scenes, especially, like it or not, via our Facebook community page to educate people prior to town meeting. Over the last few years, I think there's been a lot more interest. I'm hoping going back to the Saturday format earlier, you know, like it's been a weird few years, right? So I think this year we'll kind of see for the first time how much more interest there is in town meeting, whether or not the date change makes a difference. And I do think people pay attention, and we have social media avenues to really educate people. So I guess you get my sense of where I would go with that vote.
Okay, Mark?
I'm not philosophically opposed to it. I would love to see if the exemptions could be changed somewhat. You know, a lot, if they've never been changed, it's high time the legislation was addressed to change them, I think. But I think that'd be a selling point. But yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I'm certainly open-minded to it, and I'll give it more thought. Love to hear what the local real estate development community would, how much they'd push back and their reasons for doing so. But I'm certainly not opposed to it.
Thanks. Ann?
Yeah, kind of as Ben and Kristen said, I support it. I personally think that it would be rushing it a little bit to try to achieve this on the ballot for next month in March. I do just have some. So one question that kind of keeps popping up in my mind is, so if Algonquin, the 7 million or whatever goes to town meeting, next month, and it doesn't pass, then what happens?
Well, both towns have to pass it, and it's not the project you're approving the debt. So that's what the town meeting gets to approve. There's a warrant article saying we approve the regional committee issuing debt that they're going to assess to us. So that's what you're approving. So you're not going to have town meeting weighing in on, whether it's a turf field or a grass field or things like that. The way they would, if they don't like the project, they would not vote for that article. That's how they'd be able to scuttle it. But both towns have to say, yes, all right, won't go forward.
And to elaborate, the regional school committee can vote on it. And that's basically what they're doing now, is they're voting on it. And it gives us a 60-day window to either meet and vote it down, or if we don't meet, it gets automatically approved. If we turn it down at town meeting, they can vote it again, and the 60-day clock starts again.
Okay. So I don't know, I'm a little skeptical that the town meeting would vote to approve that debt without something like CPC to support it. So again, we can't predict the future, but I don't know. I'm a little, that's a really big project that's really going to impact our taxes. So I don't know. I'm in favor of trying to use as much CPC as possible to support that project. And I think, that's not going to happen for, next month's town meeting.
So Annie, that's why I checked with Andrew this week to see, what bonding capacity that CPC has right now. And it's nothing for the most part. So, because, if you had some bonding capacity in addition to the $700,000, you could do a lot more, but you don't. So therefore, it sounds like if this goes forward with the schedule that the regional school committee wants, which is start work, July 1st, then the only piece that CPA money could fund would be, the $700,000 or so that is in the bucket already.
Mhm.
But I still say
Okay.
every little bit helps. I wish you could do the full $3 million too, but it's not all or nothing to me. As much as you can do, I hope we get done.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I think it's, the topic has been well discussed and explained, and I would be in support of the increase to 3%. I think the concept of leveraging additional state dollars is compelling, and the ability to do more work, but I also am sensitive and I think well explained the idea that time and the time needed to make sure this is presented well so that it has a higher percentage chance of succeeding. So that I'm in agreement with what I've heard so far. So I think in general, we think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. So I think, at this point, Kathy, Andrew, feel like you got a good sense of where we stand.
Mhm.
I'm sure we'll be talking about this in the future and look forward to it. But I, happy to help and see how we can proceed with this. So,
Okay, well, thank you for letting us do this tonight.
yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks,
Night.
everybody.
Good night.
So the rest of the CPC chairman's report. Thinking. I think Freddie already said that, we talked about the meeting getting moved because we see what the numbers come in for the townhouse. There was talk, I think I mentioned this last time, but possibly a project for the golf course. They want to tie into the Southborough water supply and put sprinklers all down the fairways. Not for this town meeting, but possibly fall. I haven't seen that go anywhere. I think Freddie, I don't know if we should probably check if that can actually be CPC funds can be used for that. I know we purchased the property with CPC funds, but an irrigation system. Next time we talk with Stuart, if you can just double check that, or maybe you already know.
I can, but just a clarification. We
Yeah.
didn't purchase it with CPA funding because saving the golf course wasn't part of the original plan and they didn't go for CPA monies. We use CPA monies for the conservation restriction endowment and work that needed to be done for that.
Okay.
But so what really you funded after the fact, the restoration of the golf course when they put the public safety building on a third and they had to
To the whole-
reconfigure it. So there was funding for that. And aside from CPA requirements, the other thing to check is just double check what's in the conservation restriction. I believe we allowed it to have irrigation, but it will have to comply with whatever the CR allows.
We did. I was on the committee with Freddie and we anticipated in some fashion irrigation on the course. So but we'd have to go through and figure out exactly how that would work.
Okay. Well, that's all I had. Any questions? Other questions? Minutes. I saw the minutes came out. Any questions on that? Which ones were they? 1 second. Am I still sharing? Okay. Glasses. So meeting minutes from January 12th, 2023. There a motion to accept? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor? Mark?
You have to abstain. I wasn't there.
Ben?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Kristen? Kristen, you're on mute. Kristen, you're,
Yeah, sorry, it took me a sec. Yes.
no problem. David?
yes.
All right. Next meeting we decided was, what, the 28th? Was that right?
Don't we also have minutes from the December 22nd meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, meeting minutes from December 22nd? Is there a motion to approve those as written?
So moved.
There's a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right. David?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Ann?
Abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Ben?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Andrew's a yes. Excellent. I think we're all set.
The 28th is the next meeting?
I think that's what we said, right?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, very
Tuesday.
good. Yes, I have it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. There's nothing else. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
All those in favor? Ben?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Ann?
Oh, yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
David?
yes.
And Andrew's a yes. Again, Freddie, Betsy, thank you. Betsy's on vacation. She's calling from Carolina somewhere. Thank
Sorry
you.
about the recording, guys.
I think we.
No,
caught it.
thank you.
No worries. It's all good.
Thanks,
Andrew
everyone.
summed it
Appreciate
up.
it. Good discussion.
Have a good week.
Take care.
Okay,
Good
you
night.
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Adios.
See ya. Right, do I end this or you end this now?
I'm ending it.
All right.
Bye. All right, end for all.